a young perspective on hot-button issues around the world. This is The Hub.
Hello and welcome to this edition of The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan. Greetings from the Pakistani Embassy in Beijing. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Pakistani counterpart Mohammad Ishaq have jointly urged an early ceasefire and the resumption of U.S.-Iran talks, calling for a swift return to the hard-won MOU framework. That first-phase agreement, achieved through collective international efforts, saw Pakistan playing an indispensable mediating role. To unpack the strategic calculus behind this coordinated appeal and to explore how Pakistan's evolving foreign policy intersects with its enduring partnership with China, we turn to a seasoned voice from Islamabad. Now, my guest today is Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar, the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan. We talk about what this 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Pakistan means to her and to her country. What does success look like for CPEC 2.0, a major infrastructure project linking China and Pakistan, and what are the sticking points? I also asked her about the fact that she represented her country as foreign minister at 34 years young. What gives her the composure and confidence to do that? Here's our conversation. Minister Khar, welcome back to Beijing. And currently, as the peace deal stands, as fragile as it may be, we see breaking stories here and there about potentially breaching this ceasefire and Pakistan caught in the middle, still scrambling to put things together. What would be your advice as a veteran diplomat to policymakers on both sides?
Okay, I don't consider Israel at the moment advisable. Because when you are intent to being the spoiler and when you are in a rage where you think genocide is your right, annihilation is your right, assassination of leaders is your right. Anyone who could be a normalizing force for Iran, Israel is anti-normalization. So I don't think Israel currently is in a state where it is advisable because it has charted out a course of itself which is against humanity, which is against world peace, which is literally, it is the spoiler. As far as the United States of America is concerned, I think it has a very different objective. And it has probably been led by President Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his clique, and for whatever reasons, to do perhaps something which is not in its best interest, right? The United States of America got out of the JCPOA where Iran was complying, went maximal economic sanctions on Iran for the last many years, and then, on the advice of Israel or together with Israel, went for the maximum possible show of military power. B-2 bombers, smart bombing, ships, everything which was at its disposal. For Iran also, it has gone through decades and decades of exceptional economic sanctions. Okay, and it has been wanting to normalize, relationships with the world, but also normalize life for its normal, ordinary people. So it has been given after great hardship and after showing their mettle and having done the resistance and telling the whole world that no matter which toolkit you use, we are not going to go away. So Iran also has a unique opportunity to use this as a way of normalizing, getting the economic sanctions on, getting their own money back, etc., etc. So I believe that both the United States of America and Iran, who have had generational animosity, I mean, there are children who were born in 1979 in both the United States of America and in Iran who don't know of the conflict. Why? What is the genesis of the conflict? So we can let the future be very different than the past. This is a very, very unique moment. And when I look at the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding that has been signed between the leadership of Iran, US and witnessed by Pakistan, I look at great willingness by both parties to go on an incremental journey to build trust, to be able to solve their bigger problems. I like the fact that it is incremental, because when you want to achieve everything in one day, things fall down. So I believe that this is in many ways unprecedented. And this document has been signed by no less than the President of the United States of America and the highest leadership in Iran, and of course witnessed by Pakistan's Prime Minister. So it is absolutely a unique moment where the commitment is there from both sides, and also both sides have used every other possibility of being able to get its way with the other country. And also equally importantly, I think for the United States of America, this should be a moment where they see how they want to engage with this region, which will give the United States of America more space to be able to concentrate on the more important things back home, in their infrastructure development, in how, in the global common goods, etc. I think anyone who looks at history in a logical, rational way would say that perhaps the choice of how to treat Iran may not have been the best one, which has been through various administrations, and it doesn't seem to have served the people of the United States of America.
Do you think that very spirit of having genuine strategic autonomy, or trying to have that, gives Pakistan unparalleled leverage when, for example, when it comes to brokering the deal between U.S., Israel, and Iran, which is something extremely difficult to do, and because the world is wondering how and why it was Pakistan who is pulling this off?
I'm surprised why is the world wondering that, okay? Because look at Pakistan's geography. On our east, India. On our western side, we have Afghanistan, which has gone through throes and throes of conflict and has had two major full-scale, wars in the last 4 decades. Then we have China, a very stable friend, partner, neighbor. And then we have Iran. And on Iran, also, we've not had the best of relationships for decades, but we've tried to work on that relationship and build trust, because we understand that with neighbors, you need to work and have a relationship in which you can trust each other's intelligence, trust each other's military objectives, trust each other's political objectives. And we really try to garner that in the last decade and a half or so, since 2010, I remember very well. And then we have the ties with the GCC countries, with the Middle Eastern countries, with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Bahrain, with Qatar, with Kuwait. And we've always attached great importance to those ties also. But back in 2010, we realized that we need to improve our ties with Iran without compromising our relationship with the Gulf countries. And that we should not compromise our relationship with Iran for any other relationship also, because Iran is an important neighbor, hundreds of kilometers of borders we share. So we start working on our ties with Iran. Now, at the same time, despite what the US was doing with Pakistan, and Pakistan continued to appease, please the US, and also engage with the US as a friend. So we didn't let the fallout of US sort of, not so much happiness with Pakistan affect our diplomatic behavior or our behavior towards US. So we garnered their trust, and then of course General Asim Munir was able to inculcate a very good relationship with President Trump. But it's years and years and decades of consistent foreign policy pursuits which put Pakistan in a spot where Pakistan found itself to be basically fighting for peace, and to say that we don't want another war in our borders. We cannot afford another war. And can the world afford the aftermath of the conflict that happened in Iran? And by this time, I think all of us knew it was not a war of compulsion, it was a war of choice. It was not a war of necessity, it was a war of choice. And when you go into wars of choice, all sorts of unintended consequences happen. And Pakistan certainly didn't want the whole world or the region, and least of all the immediate neighborhood, to suffer from the consequences of someone's unnecessary wars.
The best military commander is not he who fights 100 battles and wins every one of them. The best military strategy does not lead to the desiccation of the enemy's capital city. Decoding the art of war will help you understand why there's no art in war and how Sun Tzu stayed undefeatable using the science of war, with fun stories and insightful breakdown of famous battles. Find Decoding the Art of War wherever you listen.
We're celebrating the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations of our two brotherly, and should I add, sisterly countries.
Yes.
As you were, one of the most recognized faces in Pakistan, a female. How are you reflecting on this very important anniversary between our two countries at this point in time?
Yeah. So it's the 75th anniversary of the start of diplomatic ties. But if I look at this relationship from a very strategic lens, or from a normal people-to-people lens, or from a normal political lens, or from a normal military lens, pretty much from every angle, this is a relationship which has to say that it was time tested would be maybe underplaying it. This is a relationship which has not only survived the times, but it has thrived in the times. We've been dealt with a lot of blows. I think both China has had its moments of, just being challenged by the circumstances around. Pakistan has certainly had many. But I think what we see is a complete alignment between the two countries, which has weathered every storm and gone through any type of tests. And I think that is also because I do believe that one thing that defines China and Pakistan's relationship is the fact that we seek the same thing for this region. We want this region to be independently living a peaceful, stable life where people can prosper, where economic prosperity is literally the key to defining us.
We know that Pakistan, a country I had the privilege of visiting as a reporter in 2011, Pakistan being this vibrant democracy where different parties take the reign, there are different voices from the media landscape, a very robust media scene there. But we noticed that across generations and across partisan lines, there has been this incredible consistency when it comes to its policy against vis-a-vis China. Same is true with Chinese leadership, successive leaderships, consistency with Pakistan. What do you think are the secret formula sustaining this consistency?
Okay, so first of all, I think we are, in some ways, it's more unique to Pakistan to completely agree on something. I think the Chinese people are better at agreeing on things. And in Pakistan, as you said, we have a vibrant democracy and we have political parties which often don't agree on anything else. And I used to always say, as foreign minister, and I still say this, that China unites Pakistan. Okay, so all of Pakistan comes together and says that, we are brothers and higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans. And for the Chinese people also, I think, as I said before, we don't have to want to have strategic ties. We have strategic ties because we look at the region in the same way. We look at the world in the same way. We want the same thing out of the region. We don't want others to be playing a role in the region. We don't want conflict in the region. We want stable, prosperous, growth-oriented country where people can just, intermingle and not have to worry about whose agenda is being followed. So I think it's really what unites us. I think, and I think we've developed a lot of respect for each other over time, because whether Pakistan's been tested in certain ways, whether China's been tested in certain ways, there's so many things that we do for each other which are not even in the public eye, right? There's so many things that we are defending each other. I sometimes happily complain, that when I go to Europe and to the Western Hemisphere, I sometimes feel I'm more of a spokesperson for China than I am for Pakistan, because the concerns on China outweigh the concern on any other country in the Western Hemisphere right now, whether it's in Europe or in the Americas. And I find myself fighting China's case all the time. It's not because, I have to report it back. It's just because I genuinely believe that a deeper understanding in the Western Hemisphere of what China's objectives are, what China's desire for the future are, needs to be made.
Because you famously said, according to some documents, about the importance of prioritizing relations with China, even though Pakistan needs to balance its relations with the West as well as a middle power.
I think that's something that is well understood all over. That is well understood by every Pakistani, every place. And that's something we're very proud of doing, that we have never let our relationship with China be compromised at the altar of an expedient foreign policy objective, or for a transactional foreign policy objective. That absolutely doesn't mean that we have to be unfriendly to the rest of the world. We have a deep history with many other countries, and we continue to pursue that. But this is what you call an uncompromisable good. So everybody knows, everywhere in the world, that when it comes to the question of Pakistan's strategic ties with China, Pakistan will never do anything to dent that or to, in any case, decrease its importance vis-a-vis anything else.
You once said that economic security should be a priority when a country considers foreign policy making instead of geopoliticking or geopolitical spending. When it comes to China and Pakistan, CPEC 2.0 is in focus. What does success look like for CPEC 2.0?
So I think the CPEC 1.0 was a very hard infrastructure G2G CPEC, right? I would like to imagine that Pakistan and China will have much more to gain from being able to transfer this to the industrial technological growth sector, which is between business to business and people to people, who are really the engines of growth. Okay, so I would like it to be much more focused on, technology, on agricultural growth, which it is. It's really moved in that direction. So I think it is, again, I think this is how relationships grow, because you do one thing which has its results, which has been obviously very useful, because the connectivity, more than connectivity, I don't think you could have done anything before you did connectivity. But now I think there is a huge opportunity on Pakistan to be able to benefit for the great achievements of China in the field of technology, in the field of science, in the field of AI, in the field of many other fields, and the interlinkages which are institutional, agriculture, within universities, within business to business. I think there's huge potential in that.
Which areas are you more excited and hopeful when it comes to developing these industrial capacities and really moving up the value chain for both Pakistan and China?
First, foremost, and last, I would say emerging technologies, AI, other emerging technologies, startups, and agriculture. So this is a win-win, right, in both these areas, because Pakistani entrepreneurship in startups and our technological know-how, people are very sharp. If you were to concentrate on that side, and we are able to build these institutions where things can happen, I think we should really be able to benefit. And agriculture is obviously the mainstay of Pakistan's economy, employs the most number of people, but it also has huge potential to be taken to the next level, right? So I think in that, China also has an interest in being able to partner with Pakistan for that.
China's role in this quickly evolving global geopolitical landscape. What do you think China means for a fracturing global order, or when it comes to the fact that America may not be the unipolar power, while Washington still perceives itself as so, and the global south is rising, creating this multipolar trend, but they're not succeeding 100% because of some Western countries creating all these bloc confrontations.
Currently, I think everyone is asking the question, which way is the world going? Because one thing is for sure. So let's say, okay, what do we already know? What we already know, that the current order, as it was being held, we are either outside of the unipolar moment, or we are crawling outside of it. It doesn't have staying power anymore because the world has changed. I often say that the architects of the current world order that we're living in were the winners of the Second World War, okay? And if you look at what their space was within the global GDP, and if you look at what their space is right now in the global GDP, it doesn't match up, okay? If you look at where their space was in emerging technologies, in industrial output, and you look at where their space is right now, it doesn't match up. So the new frontier technology, the new frontiers of economic growth, the new frontiers of contribution to GDP, industrial output are elsewhere. Now that is obviously in some ways putting pressure on the order as it existed. But the United States still remains the highest GDP in the world, if you go on nominal numbers, and also has technologically quite superior, and has also the largest military spending than the next 10 countries. So I don't see why the United States of America is reacting, being so fearful and threatened. I don't think they have reason to be, because I believe that China is a country which doesn't want to have an unpeaceful rise. And I believe China has the capacity to fully be able to secure itself against anyone's ambitions which might be against it. But there is space to coexist over here. So we are clearly moving, I believe, more towards a bipolar moment than a multipolar moment at the moment. And obviously, what President Trump has referred to as G2, the conversation between the United States of America and PRC, the People's Republic of China, are exceptionally important, not only for those two countries, but for the entire world. Because we are clearly in a moment where, in a non-ideological, so we're not in a Cold War moment because that was an ideological war. I don't think there's an ideological war over here. There doesn't need to be a war. There doesn't need to be complex. There can be good competition, but this whole thing of decoupling that was proposed in Washington, I thought it was ill-conceived, and I think they also think by now that it is ill-conceived. So I'm actually optimistic with President Trump and President Xi's bilateral contacts that we've had, with the summit-level meetings that we've had, and I believe that we need to manage this relationship in a way where global common goods, such as the governance structure on artificial intelligence, such as climate change, such as how do we use lethal autonomous weapons, such as how are you able to ensure that, on hunger, on things like this, that responsibility always comes to the countries which are leading. So I think it's important that we are able to somehow get out of this moment without a major conflict. There's no reason for a conflict, in my view. And I believe that nobody should have a problem with China's rise, or nobody should have any problem with... I look at China as a country which requires a stable environment. I don't look at China as a China that seeks conflict. There are many other countries which seek conflict. I believe that it is not even in China's interest to see conflict anywhere, and I don't think that has been China's history. So I get a bit surprised when the entire Western Hemisphere worries about China's rise, becoming a bit aggressive, etc. I don't personally look at the world like that at all.
Do you see China somehow is on track to become a different kind of power, and by its global initiatives and also its practices, its action, such as the BRI and CPAC, is creating a new paradigm for a rising power to hopefully eventually cross this Thucydides trap and peacefully coexist with established powers?
I would absolutely hope that, and I do believe that is China's intention, but I do believe also equally strongly that in the Western Hemisphere it is not being viewed like that. And that's why I do believe that with immense wisdom which is at the disposal of the Chinese people, deep conversations with that world to allay some of the concerns, some of the fictitious concerns perhaps, as to what China's intentions are, what China intends to do. And also I think we have to learn to understand that there's not a cookie cutter approach, a one model fits all that we can project in the world. I think this whole thing about a certain model only being the only right model, that myth has been broken in many places, and certainly China is the forerunner or the leader in having broken that myth. I think you have to accept the fact that China was able to get so many people out of poverty, China was able to manage its economic policy very well, China was able to manage its infrastructure very well, China was able to manage its economic policy very well, and perhaps learn some of the lessons from there. And not only go into this whole tirade of blame, and say, my experience of China is that many of the SMEs end up doing very good business. I look at China and look at examples to be taken, because I have really learned from, for instance, the competition between the municipalities on trying to encourage business, which means that they make the business life or doing business very easy. That's something that my country can learn from. That's something that any country can learn from, because the ease of doing business is what actually, for the local people, is what then gets foreign direct investments and everything else.
What were some of the toughest moments for you as one of the most internationally recognized Pakistani diplomat and former foreign minister? And then what are the qualities that you think are so important? Your advice to future aspiring young girls wanting to be what you did?
Okay, my advice to the future young girls or to the young boys is simply to take yourself very, very seriously, and also not take yourself very seriously at all. So don't deserve and then desire. So, don't run after positions and wanting, to be treated a certain way, etc. I think we need to put in so much work in building ourselves to be worthy of the job that is at hand. So concentrate on the job, not what people are saying about it. And I think one thing that you really have to be hard-skinned, very, very thick-skinned if you're a politician in Pakistan or anywhere else, is that you do your job and you don't worry at all about what anyone else is saying. Neither the people who are praising you nor the people who are cursing you. Okay, because you need to be focused on what is important. Because if you start worrying about who's saying good things and who's saying bad things, then your entire time will be consumed by that. And I think the toughest moments, perhaps, I would absolutely, without any doubt, say post-Salala. in Salalah when 24 of our soldiers died, and we had to decide what to do. And we basically closed down the NATO routes for the United States of America. It was a very bold decision to take. It was almost unprecedented. The Foreign Office of Pakistan believed it was the right thing to do at that time. And then we believed there was a time to start opening them. Then to be able to negotiate an apology from the United States of America after it had said that it would not apologize. Those were tough times. I think we sometimes overplay, oh, you were so good or so bad. I think people are only become who they are when they have to deal with the situation. And then it's when you find out whether which part of you stands up that particular time.
Thanks so much, Minister Khar, for all your insights.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you. With that, we come to the end of this edition of The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in the Pakistani Embassy in Beijing. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you again next time.